All right. Jared and Steven here for, I guess, what will be our last broadcast via Google Hangouts because Google Hangouts, their little whatever relationship they have with YouTube, or actually, I guess Google owns YouTube. So, anyway, somehow Google Hangouts is going away. So next time we do this, I'll have to figure out some other system.
Okay, well, we'll have to work that out for sure. Yeah, at some point.
Yeah. So if there's any sentimentality attached to Google Hangouts here, we can have a little moment of silence for it. But
Yeah.
otherwise, we're going to talk about Stranger Things season 3, and we're doing pretty well here. We went a whole year without doing anything from Cobra Kai and Avengers Infinity. Let's see, Cobra Kai and Avengers Infinity War to Cobra Kai season 2 and Avengers Endgame, and then we've done Spider-Man Far From Home, and now we're doing Stranger Things. So we're getting more reliable at this.
Hey, I know. Yeah, there's some recurring things happening. I'd say there's also the idea there's more entertaining content to talk about now. I suppose. I don't know.
Maybe that's it.
Or maybe just more available than I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, your life
good.
was pretty crazy for a while. So, but before we get into that, you wanted to touch on something from Comic-Con, which specifically was just the Marvel reveals from Comic-Con, right?
Yeah, which I really don't know how much we should get into because the more I thought about that after bringing it up to you, I was like, there was so much stuff like that could be a whole nother conversation in itself.
That's true. That's true. Maybe we can just do that as a separate thing.
Yeah.
Although, I will say, the one thing that I still do appreciate from it is the fact, of course, we've known this for a while and we just didn't know exactly when we were getting it. And I guess maybe it's going to be the first limited series to come out on Disney Plus is The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which will always have a special place in my heart because I think even after, let's see, was it after? I guess it was in our Infinity War talk where I wasn't really referencing them from Infinity War. I guess I was referencing them from Civil War, but saying like, man, I would be so down for a Cap and Bucky movie, and they delivered. They delivered really something better because it's kind of like 2 movie. It's like whatever 6 hours of content or something like that, 8 hours. I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm super down for that one.
I'm very excited about that one. I like that they revealed the logo for it, which has Captain America's shield in it. So
yeah, right.
There are definitely tones of picking up from the end of Endgame there. And Daniel Bruhl coming back, Zemo, the villain from Civil War. Which is exciting. And since you picked a highlight, I'll just say maybe we can just talk about it in detail at another time or something. But I'll throw another highlight out there that really blew me away was their little mic drop at the end of casting. Forgive me, Mr. Ali, but I'm going to try and say his name from memory. Mahershala Ali as the new Blade, which I'm so glad that Marvel has decided to kind of tiptoe around recasting some of their actors and other content to do them again because I don't know if you saw Luke Cage on Netflix. He was the season 1 villain of Luke Cage, and like that season of Marvel stuff where they were starting to hit high notes on their villains but killing them. So we never got to see any more of them. He was definitely one of them. And his story arc within the season was definitely the best part of that season. Like Luke going head to head with them, and that was the first time I'd ever seen him. Apparently, I mean, he's won like a couple of Oscars since then.
I've actually been like a big fan of him for a while, and I first saw him in a show that was kind of like, I guess, a little cult hit, and it was a pretty big ensemble cast. And most of those actors, I thought like, these guys are really good, but in an ensemble television project, who knows when and where I'll see them again. But it was. Did you ever see or hear of? Well, I guess you didn't, because you said you hadn't seen him before. But did you ever hear of the 4400 on
I
USA?
did hear of it.
Yeah.
I have heard of that show. Yeah.
Yeah, he was in the 4400. That was where I first saw him, and he was the 4400 was about all of these people who had been abducted, kind of like Alien. It seemed like Alien abduction, initially, at least, over time, just like throughout the decades. I think some people going all the way back to like the early 1900s or whatever, and then all of them suddenly like reappear. There's like 4,400 of them that like reappear together, and so he played a character that was, I think he was maybe from like the 50s or so, and he was in I'm trying to think if he was in the war. I'm kind of mixing up some of my stuff because I can't remember all the details on it. But anyway, that's where I first saw him, and then he was in Moonlight, which was one of the Oscar winner, actually, I think.
Yeah,
it was part of that whole big flap. Yeah,
it was the Steve Harvey year.
Yeah,
so
the Steve. Yeah, right. Yeah, so I started to say Oscar nominee, but yeah, it actually won. And then he was. What's that?
That new one this year. I was just sorry. I stepped on your lines there. It was whatever this year was. Was it the Green Book? Was that what it?
He was in Green Book. I didn't see that, but yeah, he was in Green Book. The other thing I saw him in was True Detective season 3. And so he played True Detective season 3 is kind of another one of those time hopping series. And so he played a character, basically like kind of like 3 different stages of his life, including like old man version of his character. Huh. And man, he was really good as like the old man version. Okay. Like the young version of him was pretty annoying. But the old man version of him was really good. So yeah, like he's a great actor. And then too, when I hadn't thought about Blade in so long, but yeah. As soon as they announced him for that, I'm like, oh, he's got the perfect look for that too. It's kind of a Wesley Snipes type build and look. So
yeah. He was, I think he was nominated or might have even won Best Actor this past year for Green Book, which I didn't see, but I haven't really seen any Oscar-winning films for a few years now. But and then it's funny you would mention Snipes too, because I read just in a headline, not that we really needed it, but it's still a nice gesture that Snipes totally like gave his blessing on that and was like, yeah, no, great call.
Right.
Also, a film we've come back to and other side conversations, he was the voice of Uncle Aaron in Into the Spider-Verse. The Prowler.
Okay. Yeah.
So he's like triple Marvel.
Yeah. So, yeah. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point about that, about Blade, because it's very much it's Deadpool levels of not PG-13 friendly if you want to do it right. And I would say, we'll be 30 to 35 movies in probably by the time we get to Blade. So as long as they don't go off the rails within 5 movies, I think if there's a way for it to be done, I think they can figure it out. I don't really know how, but there's also like, did they actually come out and say that Blade's like a feature film in the MCU, or it's just a property that they're redoing? Because one reason I ask that is because they are. I was given the impression somewhere that whether it's Disney Plus or the fact that Disney owns the majority stake in Hulu now, that they're going to be producing mature content for one of their programs. I don't think it's Disney Plus. I think that was still going to be kid and teen friendly. But like if they wanted to make a TV MA series, they could put it on Hulu.
Yeah.
And still keep Blade the way that it is. But I would kind of be interested to see how these talented storytellers who have been through all these phases so far could
Mm-hmm.
adapt that to still work with the film. Because I mean, in the one sense, it would be fun to see Blade with the handcuffs off, of PG-13. But I would hate for him not to have the opportunity to be interacting with the other characters and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question, because they didn't. They didn't really like list it anywhere on the slate, so they didn't. I guess maybe they didn't say what it was. In terms,
Maybe they're still deciding.
maybe so. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, it feels like he's just, unless they're really gonna, I don't know, do something big with Hulu or something like that. It feels like he's just too big of an actor to stick on, like a Hulu series or something. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
I think you're right about that. I mean, like all conventional wisdom would say it's going to be a feature film.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
like you don't go to Comic-Con to announce a TV series if you're Marvel Studios. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's more of a D23 announcement, I would think. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
we'll see.
Yeah. Either way, I'm here for it.
Yeah. 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 Cool. All right. So, back to a non-Marvel series, Stranger Things. They'll probably
I dressed for it today.
They'll probably. Oh yeah, I did. I could see the top. I could see Will. I could see Will on the top of your shirt there.
I've got to get my ankles right. One of these days, I'll have a better framing. Go ahead.
No, I could just see. I could see like Will's head, and it looked like the movie poster of or the season poster or something like that. So yeah, you're doing better than me. I don't think I have any. I have a Steve Harrington Funko Pop, but
cool. Which one is it? Is it the sailor outfit Funko Pop?
It's not. No, it's the season one with the bat.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, my mom actually got this for me.
Oh, nice.
So I'll go ahead and get my cheap plug in now, because it's going to come up in this conversation, because it's my humble brag every time I talk about Stranger Things. Every time. So fun story. Stranger Things shoots in many locations, most of which are in Georgia, which obviously you're aware, Jared. But they're small town square shots and locations are in my old hometown of Jackson, Georgia, in Butts County. Season what's the name of the place? Is it Melvald or something like that? The drugstore, general store.
Oh yeah, I don't.
Where Winona Ryder's character works, and the Radio Shack where Sean Astin's character worked in season 2, are actual locations, actual drugstores, and an actual Radio Shack on the square in Jackson, which was where I worked for 8 years before I moved to North Carolina. So after I moved, my little town, our little town, got exciting and started having places filmed.
Yeah.
So, just 3 to 5 years after we left the state, exciting things started happening there, and so they began selling merch and stuff there. And my mom was just like super excited about it once I actually told her that we watched the show and we're picking out all the little locations in town when found out when they were shooting there throughout the series. And so she bought me one and sent it to me. So that's why I have it. So it's just something I use to appeal to all the millennials in my workplace, to show them how cool I am and not totally out of touch.
Nice. Yeah. Well, and we both have sort of a connection to Stranger Things. I've worked on an independent film project one time with two of the guys that do the lighting for Stranger Things.
Awesome.
One of the guys was dating one of my professors from my old film program, and she was writing and producing a little independent short film, and he's the main lighting guy for Stranger Things, so he was doing the lighting for her on that. So just these neat little peripheral connections to it. So
yeah, it definitely creates a greater sense of
right,
attachment to the show and stuff.
So. Okay, so tell me just tell me what you thought of season 3. I guess maybe, just sort of a succinct little, overall thought. And then where would you rank, like, give me your rankings for 1, 2, and 3, like what you would rate each one of them.
All right. In season 3, I definitely enjoyed a whole lot. The amount that I enjoyed definitely outweighed the amount that I didn't enjoy. I think it was a really solid season. There were a lot of really great interactive moments between characters that hadn't spent a lot of time together in the show previously. I think it was really solid. There were a couple. I think I had, and we can talk about this later in the conversation, but like I had a pretty big hang up with one of the side plots of the story, or one of the story threads, that I was ready not to ruin the season for me, but for it enough to be a gripe. But it appears to be something that they're laying the breadcrumbs for to look further into in the next season, I'm guessing. And then, so if I were to rank the seasons, I would go 1, 3, 2, probably.
Yep.
And a lot of that, I think it's just initial impact. I binged 2 pretty quickly before 3 came out, so I could be caught up. So I just kind of went right. 2 and 3 really run together with me a little bit.
Gotcha.
But I think that the amount of overall enjoyment and impact I felt initially definitely ranks in that area, 1, 3, and 2. So what about you?
Yeah, same. 1, 3, 2. No question about it. Season 1, I would give like a 9.5. Like I loved season 1. I mean, that was when we knew nothing about this show or the cast, or I mean, I guess we knew Winona Ryder. But other than that, we didn't, we'd really never seen most of these actors before. I guess we'd seen Matthew Modine. He was the villain in season 1. But it was just something fresh and new, and loved the 80s nostalgia. I was mostly an 80s kid. I was born the last 2 weeks of 79. So most of my childhood was the 80s. And so loved that part of it too. Season 2 was, the first 4 episodes just bored me. The first 4 episodes of season 2 just bored me. And that's something that season 3, a lot of people have kind of critiqued it for getting off to a slow start too. To a certain extent, I felt like it did, but man, just 2 just seems so much slower to me. Plus with 2, we had that season, or the, I think it was like the 7th episode of the season, which was just like the side trek to Chicago with Elle.
Oh yeah.
It's just like the one universally reviled episode. I don't know how you feel about it, but it seems like 99% of the Stranger Things fan base, me included, just despised that episode. It almost was kind of like going back to Lost. I'll always find ways to tie in Lost to any talk.
It's such a useful program.
It is. It's almost like where we had like 3 episodes left, and we got the Across the Sea episode with
Is that the backstory?
The backstory of Jacob and Man in Black.
Oh,
where
gosh.
it's just like, no, this was not. Maybe it could have worked at some point earlier, but yeah.
You just feel bad for Lindelof and Hughes. Like, you knew they just felt like so bullied into doing that episode.
Yeah.
I feel like,
like
people just complain, what are you gonna answer all these questions? All right, here's a story. Well, that sucks. So I'm like, well, you shouldn't have asked for it. You force them into midichlorians.
Yeah, damned if you do, damned if you don't. There.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So just
I was just gonna say that's go ahead. I'm sorry, we're talking.
That's okay. Yeah. So just to finish that off. So that was kind of how I felt about 2. 3, the first few episodes were a little bit slow, but somehow I haven't rewatched 2 in a while. But 3 just interested me more somehow from the beginning. I guess just because I think they set up, the the thing with Billy, you know, kind of right from episode 1, or you saw kind of where it was going. And, you know, some people think that they took certain things too far, like with the Russian underground base in underneath the mall, which I completely get. Like, they definitely went for it here. And I guess maybe their thinking was, you know, we've already had secret government experiments, but it was different. It was more plausible, the way they did it in the first 2 seasons, where with this one, you have to suspend some more disbelief for this one. But yeah, it's still 1-3-2 for me. Like I said, I would have given 9.5 for 1, and then 3, I'll say like 8.8, and then 2 would be like an 8.0 for me, probably.
Yeah, I'd almost give the exact same. I mean, ratings for all 3. I mean, I was about to say like 8.5 for 3, and then 8 for 2. Yeah, it was the Russian story. Like, just totally threw me off. And like, I will go. I feel that I'm a very forgiving viewer, or at least I'm becoming even more forgiving as a viewer in my older age. Like, I will be the guy who will be the devil's. Now, don't agree with me right away, because of what I'm about to say. I'll be devil's advocate for Captain Marvel, even of all things, you know, if necessary. So, but for Stranger Things, especially, like it's okay. I will go along on the ride for you because I see what you guys are trying to do. And that, if it hadn't been for that end credit scene at the end of the season, I was ready to be like, I have no idea why we needed to do the whole Russian thing. Like, other than the fact of like, hey, Red Dawn is an 80s trope that we haven't looked into yet. So let's take you know, Soviet hysteria and inject that into our retro, you know, nostalgia machine and throw that in as well. And I still don't understand the Russians' motivations for coming to Hawkins, how they discovered Hawkins of all places to build their underground base and everything under Gwinnett Place Mall, or wherever it was. And all this stuff. Now, I'm more forgiving of that now, seeing that they're going to continue exploring the Russian element of it in season 4, I guess.
Right.
So I'm a little more okay with that now. But the whole time I was like, no, I don't get this at all. Like, I don't understand like why we're doing this and where it's going. And it also it did help it out a little bit more, though, that my favorite, like, if we're going to Two Towers this thing, you know, where we're splitting up the ensemble into little subgroups, team, what did they call themselves? Scoop Troop or something like that.
Maybe, maybe so.
That was of Dustin and Steve and
Robin,
Ethan Hawke and Amy Thurman's get Robin, and Erica were my favorite side group. Their chemistry on screen was fantastic. And I didn't think I was going to like Erica at the beginning of the season. Like, I thought her as funny as kind of a one-liner girl, but I was like, oh gosh, they're going to shoehorn her in here. But she blended in really well. And by the end of the season, I'm like, okay, I'm into them, like, bringing her in and stuff like that. Which was entertaining.
That's definitely like that little side group. I think is almost everybody's favorites, you know, bar none. If this was a network show and not, you know, the Duffers with Netflix and having a specific vision for this, like, we would probably get like a spinoff of that little set of characters, you know?
Right. Yes.
Like raking in that money.
Yeah. Drain it dry. Trying to think here a little bit more about the characters and stuff. Like, I appreciated their, you know, continuing of sort of the nostalgic things. You know, it just, this show in general, like, one of the things I love so much about it is some of these different elements. Like as a kid, and even as an adult, I'm not like huge into horror movies. Like I'm not ashamed to admit that I'm just now really starting to appreciate certain horror uh, content
Mm-hmm.
in some ways, because I'm brave enough not to be bothered by it anymore. I guess because we live in a real world that's scarier than any fiction
Yeah,
now.
right. Right.
And so, um, but even before I say I got all that courage, the John Carpenter type horror stuff
Mm-hmm.
was, save for, like, Halloween or
Yeah.
something like that, was a little bit easier for me to get into. I think, like, one really weird, kinda creepy movie that Carpenter did that I couldn't get enough of as a kid was Big Trouble in Little China.
Oh, okay.
Um, that was just and that feels like that's not really probably classified as a horror film, but it's creepy enough to make you uncomfortable and
Mm-hmm.
still has, like, the action and comedy elements. So it feels like The Goonies put into Big Trouble in Little China with me,
Mm-hmm.
which are 2 of my favorite '80s properties, put together, and so, like, the way those that kinda feels like a warm blanket even when you're, like, you know, getting jump scares or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's I will say it's probably the goriest season in terms of
Oh,
the
yeah.
monster, like the sort of melted flesh look of things, which is a little, I mean, visual gore like is just not necessary for me to stoke that sort of fear. It's almost more of a turn off really than a scare.
Yeah.
But the so there's that element, but I really like the way they handle both of those elements in the series and stuff, and also too like I give them credit that usually when you take one, it's I mean, we can go back to Lost again with like the character of Walt, like when a kid character gets ages,
Mm-hmm.
you can run into some real storytelling landmines and stuff. And so like when these kids are getting into adolescence and teen years, having to deal with love as
Mm.
a plot point
Right.
could really be an obstacle for them. But I thought they handled that really well, and I give them a lot of credit to how they treated Will's character in conflict with the other boys, like, kinda
Yeah.
moving on, like, I actually really enjoyed that interchange of seeing, like, Will grapple with the fact that, like, "Hello, I've been possessed
Mm-hmm.
by, evil forces for the past years. I just wanna play the stinking board game,
Yeah.
with you guys. Like, why are you all, like, moving on with your life?"
Yeah.
Um, I thought that
Yeah.
was really yeah, a really wise choice and it made the show that much, better on a deeper level.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, and that's yeah, that's very true to the real world because, um, just like like psychologically, a lot of times if someone goes through a really traumatic experience, they're more likely to kind of get stuck there. I mean, sometimes permanently. We see plenty of adults that act like children, but at least um, stuck there for a while, like kind of developmentally and emotionally and stuff like that. So it made perfect sense for him to kind of be behind the others for that reason. And just because like I don't remember what the amount of time was that he was stuck in the upside down and what the amount of time was, I mean, show wise that he was possessed and stuff like that. But I mean, he, literally has lost a chunk of time of his life. So, whether you want to kind of look at it psychologically or not, there's very good reasons why he would be kind of behind the other kids and just wanting to kind of go back to the way things were. So, yeah, that made perfect sense. Yeah, as far as a lot of the things I liked, I think I liked most of it. I think I would almost rather just kind of, for me, get the stuff that I didn't like out of the way.
Yeah.
The thing, one of the things that annoyed me the most was I think the whole Joyce and Hopper thing. Uh, it,
Really?
yeah, it just wasn't cute. It just wasn't cute to me. It just felt too one note to me.
Do you
I
mean
mean,
like they're like will they, won't they kind of thing, or
yes,
like
just
they're
the
full
bickering, just
thread?
the just
Okay.
yeah, just the constant bickering. and Murray, and they kind of hang a lantern on it, with when they're in the car, and Murray's just like, I forget what I think he says, like, get a room or something. And yeah, that just wore thin for me. And I feel like they just kind of, I don't know, it felt like they dumbed Hopper down, I guess, too much. Like I mean, maybe it was just because of that whole thing, but it just felt too, like I said, it just felt too one note to me. Like they almost didn't really know what to do with those two for most of the season. And so they just kind of gave them, this back and forth thing.
Yeah, that's fair. I didn't love what they did with Hopper in general this season. I was so happy for how they ended season 2 with like him like formally, and yeah, my adoption bias is showing. That's
right.
Fine. That's who I am, of adopting 11. But like there are some, like he's the town sheriff.
Mm-hmm.
He is not without his past of maybe like substance problems and dealing, with relationship issues, and he's a little broken there from his previous marriage. So there's room for his character to be flawed and as a result of those things, and that I understand that. But like, how do I put this? When your child is a teenage girl and has powers, I don't think even in your most emotionally compromised state, you're dumb enough to start like throwing things and yelling at her when you're angry. I was like, are you stupid, man? Yeah. Like, like, do you really want to stoke that fire? Like, don't get me wrong. I understand the sentiment and the emotion very closely, but, my kids can't, move things with their mind.
Right.
So, and haven't, killed armed guards
right.
In the past. So that was one thing. Also, I agree to an extent with your bickering thing. Like I mean, I was fine with them trying to like kind of move them along to a point where maybe they'd get together, because I think that would be all right. But there was, I think it was in the season, maybe it was in season 2, I don't remember. But Joyce is having this flashback where she's watching Cheers with Sean Astin's character, I think.
Right. No, it was early on in season 3 where she's flashing back to that.
And he's just like, I don't understand why they just get together. And like Sam and Diane, Ted Danson, and Shelley Long's character from Cheers. And they are like not only an 80s trope, but it is the textbook sitcom example of two characters who bicker at each other when they should actually be together.
Right.
And so like, I'm like, wow. I'm like, again, like, it's like somebody even like later on in the season made a Red Dawn reference in relation to the Russian thing. I'm like, guys, if we're watching this show, we were probably in the 80s. We totally get it. Like, you don't have to like come right out and tell us that this is what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so I was just in that moment, I'm like, okay, I get it. I'm like, did anybody call Hopper Magnum PI while he was wearing the Hawaiian shirt?
I want to say someone made a Miami Vice reference. Maybe it was Magnum though. I don't remember for sure. It was one of the two, I think.
I hope they didn't, because I was about to say, like, we your target audience already gets what you're going for. Like, I think if they could tone down on the like on the nose references to 80s stuff, it'd be fine. Like, because we totally get that going from them. And so, I mean, I think the thing about the relationship stuff, especially on the adult level, like you expect the kids, like Mike's whole thing with 11 and like Max convincing 11 like how girls are supposed to treat teenage boys and stuff, and the montage of the boys trying to buy 11 a gift in the mall was hysterical, because of how stupid boys are like at that age. That's all understandable because kids that age are that dumb, but when you see grown-ups acting that stupid for something, like, it just feels annoying, especially in such an entertaining show that you're ready for the plot to move along. Which it wasn't so bad like a 13 or 20 episode series where it really drags everything down. At least it's like an 8 episode series where it'll pick up again. But I see your I see your point in that. Next thing, unless there's more you want to add to that, I've got another one I'd forgotten about.
No, go ahead.
Um, I listen. I like their whole ensemble, so I'm not like voting for anyone to just be getting rid of. But I will say, if Jonathan and Nancy didn't come back, I wouldn't miss them.
I agree with that, and I've seen that other places too, where it's just kind of like, yeah, the whole Jonathan Nancy sleuthing thing. It doesn't do much for me anymore.
They served a really good purpose in season 1. I never thought when they got together in season 2 that I would be annoyed that she wasn't going back to Steve.
Right.
Like, kudos on the show for turning me around on that, you know?
Yeah. Well, there's a meme that's like season 1, Nancy's too good for Steve, and then season 2, Steve's too good for Nancy, you know? So
it's true. Yeah. So by season 3, I was like, oh gosh, like,
yeah,
and I mean, God love him. He would make a great heel in WWE, I guess. But Jake Busey's character in the first few episodes were just,
that whole newsroom thing. Like again, they're leaning in hard, and I get it. I get it. The 80s were a different time, but this was very much like, he reminded me of, because he has kind of that look too. He has kind of the look, but then it's so over the top too. He reminded me of like Biff Tannen.
Yeah, he did have a Biff.
Yeah. And so just that whole newsroom was just like a bunch of like older, like Biff Tannen and his like groupies or something, you know. It was just so over the top. And it was that was another thing that I mean, beyond just the whole Jonathan Nancy thing, like specifically that interaction with the board at the paper, it just made it so much worse.
Yeah. The only thing I enjoyed about that, their whole existence in that season pretty much, was the running gag of her running into the dark room every time when he was trying to develop photos. I don't know why. That made me laugh every time. And maybe I'm simple, but gosh, could have done without that whole thread.
Yeah. You know, what I thought was interesting was to me, a lot of the characters really didn't have that much character development this season. And I guess I'd have to really kind of think back to see if they did in season 2 or not. Because like season 1, I felt like they did, like there were like clearer arcs and the characters developed more. But, it just felt kind of like they were like, even though you had like the kids in sort of these love stories, most of it just kind of felt like it was tied to that. And so to me, it was almost like some of the side characters who had been like the side characters got some of the most character development, where of course, Billy becoming a villain, it's kind of a weird area where he's possessed. And so, but by the end, he does get, his character gets fleshed out more, and you get to see him, have a dramatic, redeeming moment. And one thing, other thing that I did like was the fact that they turned Mike and Nancy's mom from just this, for the first 2 seasons, just like this, like desperate housewife, like lusting after the teenage boy, to, actually like giving her some, actual things to do, with actually making the decision to not, pursue that. And then she has the talk with Nancy about, after Nancy gets fired, about how hard things are out in the real world. And so I empathized with her character, a lot more, where you think back about how things were in the 80s, for women, where it was, harder to have careers and stuff like that. And so you kind of see where she's coming from, in that, she probably married, someone who was a good financial situation for her, or however that developed. You can see that her spirit was kind of broken there a little bit, and she doesn't want the same thing for Nancy. Another thing I will say, that this was just kind of a not really I wouldn't call it a throwaway moment, but because I thought it was really funny, but where Mike and Nancy's parents get off of like the Gravitron, I think it was, at the amusement park or at the fair, and they see Joyce and Hopper, like, you know, bickering, and I think they were running at the time from the assassin guy. And one of them goes, "What a weird couple." And the camera just kind of hangs on them there for a minute, you know, because you're looking at the two of them side by side. And here you've got this, you know, attractive, middle-aged woman with this, you know, obviously kind of very nerdy kind of guy. And I just thought that was hilarious.
That might be one of the most real life pieces of dialogue, though.
Yes.
I will say, as a married man, like, oh my gosh, my wife is my life, man. But I'm sure, like, because I mean, I am the Mike's dad of our relationship for sure. You know, with Allison, and I've been in that moment where we've seen other people and are like, how did that even happen? Like, what's going on there?
Yes.
And like, and that is just, oh my gosh, that's just so true to life. And, you know, actually, I think is also true to life. I'm glad you brought that up. Like, it didn't require a whole lot to say so much more in the story about her character development of, like, when she was about to cheat on him and then she just sees him like drooling, snoring, asleep in the recliner, holding one of their kids, you know?
Yeah.
And like, that was all she needed to see to like come back crashing back down to reality. Like, what am I doing? You know, kind of thing. And I was like, that's exactly it. Like, you know, maybe she did make the safe choice or something like that, but also, like, the safe choice is the safe choice for a reason, you know? And like, once you've built something with someone and you've committed to stay committed to that, like, it's sometimes the monotony of the secure can tempt you into thinking that it's not worth staying in, you know, because the new and the uncertain and the exciting, you know, can kind of stoke that in you and stoke ideas of regret or like what if or grass is greener on the other side, all those metaphors and stuff. And so you know, it's tempting. And so I thought it was cool because, like, I was feeling really uncomfortable at the beginning of the season there. I'm like, are they about to do like a Stacy's mom kind of thing going on here? Like, what is this? Seems very out of place with the tone of the entire show. And so for all that to happen, I'm like, okay, like, I'm glad they stepped back from it. And it served as a vehicle for moving the story forward, because that's what put Billy into the place that he was to get, you know, mind flayed or whatever you're going to say, and stuff. And, you know, normally when it's done too much, I get really annoyed by humanizing villains. Sometimes I just want your villain to be a villain so you can hate them. But I think that's something that's also softened me a little in my old age, as long as it's not done all the time. Like, you know, Heath Ledger's Joker didn't need an explanation because his chaotic evil served further reinforced who he was as a character. And so, but Billy, like, I think it strengthened him more to get those glimpses into why he is who he is. Because and really, in reality, you know, he's still a kid. Like, he's you know, just barely. But like, and so I think that I appreciated that more in this situation of showing all that stuff. And it was a little quick, I think, for 11 to kind of put all these pieces together. But again, 8 episodes, it's going to happen. I would rather have it happen quick than have her take another trip to Chicago or something. You know? So,
right. Going back to the thing with Mike and Nancy's mom. The actress, and I can't remember her name, but the actress who plays her said that originally the scene was written to where she just saw, it was just her husband, you know, their dad. And she asked the Duffers, she said, Holly, the daughter, the little girl has got to be, please put her in this scene. She's got to be in the scene, because she said she felt like, you know, that would make it much more impactful that, you know, she's not only seeing her husband, but, you know, that's her her family there, you know,
Right.
or part of it, you know. And so I thought that was cool that, you know, she took the initiative with that to kind of, you know, give her insight into, you know, the character that she plays, and they did that for her.
Yeah. That was a
Yeah.
great call.
Yeah. Yeah. Going to Billy. Yeah. Billy, you know, ended up being, I kind of wished, I understand why they did it. It would have been, you know, really tough to kind of bring him back for the future and to completely redeem another villain and all that stuff. But yeah, I liked getting to see, like you said, like more of his backstory. And it does then, like, you go back and kind of watch, you can kind of go back and rewatch season 2 and have that give you more insight and more empathy for him, you know. And
Yeah.
The guy who plays him, Dacre Montgomery, who's actually Australian, you know, is one of those, like, where you can't tell
Right.
it. You hear him talk, or it's kind of like hearing you know, Rick
Hugh
from
Jackman.
well, yeah, like Hugh Jackman, or, you know, Rick, Andrew Lincoln, who's Rick from The Walking Dead, or Hugh, is it Laurie that was House?
Yeah, Hugh Laurie.
Yeah, and you're just like, oh my gosh, what what is this? So yeah, so he did I thought a great job with that character. And so I'm actually going to miss that character, because I think in a way it would have been fun to see him come back for a season 4. But I think it would have been tough. I think I'm not saying they didn't make the right call, because I think it was smarter thing to do to kind of end his storyline there. But I also always like seeing, you know, when a villain has had some sort of really just earth-shaking, life-altering experience, to see, you know, what do they become. And so I kind of will miss that. But yeah, he was definitely one of my favorite parts. I thought, you know, he and Elle, you know, were kind of the standouts in terms of acting, you know. And they weren't, of course, like we said, the Scoop Troop was, you know, definitely the most fun to hang out with. But in terms of acting, and like, especially that scene, I'm trying to think which episode this was in, maybe it was 6, where she goes into, you know, she's looking around to see what's going on, and then you think she wakes up in the cabin, but it's still part of, it's still inside her mind. And he comes out, and he's giving her that long monologue about, you let us in, we're going to kill you, we're going to kill your friends. And just the two of them in that scene, I was like, oh, that's so good. That is such good acting, you know. So
J.J. Abrams should really take note of that and, like, transfer that kind of intensity to the Rey and Kylo Ren, like, psychic conversations. Could you imagine that kind of intensity in Star Wars? Anyway,
oh my gosh,
it would be ages better. But let's not get our hopes up for something that's not going to happen. Right. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. You know, one thing I was surprised by, even though it was pretty much one individual scene, because honestly, I thought he was pretty obnoxious for most of the season, was Mike. But boys of that age usually are pretty obnoxious all day long, and have a hard time articulating their feelings. And I, at the beginning of the season, was highly identifying with Hopper, wanting to, you know, just get rid of him. But again, your daughter has psychic powers. Maybe you should try a different approach to her happiness. But no, the season where, like, the episode where he is arguing against the entire rest of the group, trying to protect Elle.
Yeah.
When he's like, the rest of you look at her like she's some kind of machine or some kind of a weapon, you know, he looks at her like she's a person. And really, it's just boiling down to him admitting that he loves her, and he's just afraid to say it out loud.
Right.
Was awesome. I was like, whoa, dude, you've captivated me here in a moment. Like, which, to be fair, that's that's Finn Wolfhard, right? That's the actor, like,
yeah,
which is just the most heavy metal name I've ever heard. I've seen him, like, because he was also one of the kids in the new It
I think he was
remake, right?
Richie in it.
And he was fantastic in that, like,
Mm-hmm.
as well. And I don't know, that was just like a really well done scene, and almost like if you can, it's not easy to try to turn a whole character in one episode or in one scene who's been behaving a certain way, and you're trying to establish that rationale, like what you just said with Billy, like, he's been behaving a whole way his whole life, on the show,
Mm-hmm.
and it stems from these traumatic incidents when he was a kid. To get to that point where you're explaining it and not have it feel like it's some sort of cheap retcon or something.
Right.
And I think they did that really well with Mike, in that episode. And for what it's worth, too, I also really who was I going to go to? I was trying to think when we were talking about the kids not getting a whole lot of growth this year.
Yeah.
I feel like they split them up. I feel like Mike and 11 gets attention in every season because she's kind of the star of the show.
Yeah.
But like Mike, I think got a lot of growth in season 3, and Mike and Will, and I feel like Lucas and Dustin really got it in season 2.
Yeah.
And it's like they split them up a bit. But I've really enjoyed. Dustin didn't really get a whole lot because he was just doing the whole, like, I have a girlfriend I met at camp thing, which that paid off.
Yeah. Yeah, that was great. Like I knew they were going to do that at the end. It's like you're going to find out that he really does have a girlfriend, but the way they did it with the Never Ending Story song was pretty great. Yeah.
The way they kept building it up, I was really hoping they would find some way to actually cast Phoebe Cates to make her be the girlfriend. Like, I don't know if they were going to, like, Disney de-age her or something or what. And I'm like, they keep saying this girl's going to have to look like her or something like that, the Never Ending Story thing was like, and I confess, even as a kid of the 80s, Never Ending Story was not really one of my things. So I didn't recognize it right away.
Yeah.
But once they got into that Blind the Song, I'm like, oh, that's what they're doing.
Right.
The fact that they were singing to each other over the radio, and it was interspersing every party of the group that had access to the radio.
Right.
And when they were doing, like, the Jurassic Park thing where the car was driving away from the Mind Flayer and it was chasing them while they're all sitting there just looking at each other.
Right.
I could have just watched that clip, like, in GIF form on a loop over and over again.
Right.
And died. Like, it was, oh man, that it is not easy to turn a moment of terror on its head like that. And I've heard people say, or maybe it's an old idiom or something like that there's a very thin line between horror and comedy or something like that. Maybe. Or is it? Yeah, I think that's what it is.
I think that is it.
Boy, man, they jumped back and forth on that one so well in that moment. I was really, really into that.
Yeah. I agree. And another thing that I did like from the season was they, I think they realized that they had to kind of go in some different directions and couldn't just deliver, the first 2 seasons, we had Elle basically saving the day at the end, just destroying the Demogorgon in season 1 and closing the portal in season 2. And, we'll go back to that probably in season 4. If not in season 4, then, for sure at the end of the series. It's because I think they're making it sound like it's probably going to go 5 seasons. But they couldn't go back to that again. It's kind of like there's just certain things, like they couldn't put, like, Will in, have him be the one, in danger, or in the most danger again. They couldn't go back to that with Elle again. So I did like how, like, even though some of it was really taking some leaps and really going for it on a lot of levels, I did like the fact that they did some different stuff, because season 2 to me was just too similar to season 1. And so I'm really curious to see where they go in season 4. I'm kind of worried that it may get too big. Someone sent me this thing saying, or actually it was just a screen cap of a tweet, and I haven't actually verified all this information, but it sounds right. It says season 1 is set in fall 1983. Season 2 was set in winter 1984, which I don't know. I guess it started out.
Well, it started out at Halloween.
It started out at Halloween, yeah. So,
and I don't think it went through 2 or 3 months.
No, season. Yeah. So that's kind of
a fall show.
That's kind of
fall season.
Yeah, that's kind of iffy. Actually, season 1 might have almost been more set in winter because they did end up. Well, they closed on like Christmas, I think, but I can't remember. I can't remember where the season actually started. But anyway, just to continue with this, so it says season 3 was set in the summer of 1985. And it says, so season 4 will probably be set in the spring of 1986, which is when Chernobyl happened. So it does make you wonder if we're setting up like, man, but are they going to go to Russia?
That's the thing. So let's, I mean, it would be foolish. Anybody who's watching this that hasn't seen the season or doesn't already know where things are going.
Right.
So they do that end credit scene at the end of the last episode where they're in Russia and it's revealed that the Russians are in the possession of a Demogorgon. They're apparently feeding prisoners to something. And so you can tell, the interactivity with the Upside Down or the gate is still very much in business on that side of things. So there's going to have to be some sort of progression of story that's going on in Russia. My theory, though, and it could be both, I don't know, is the way they left the pieces in suspension with the characters. You have Joyce and the Byers family taking 11 since Hopper is dead, which pissed me off, but that's another thing. That was going to kill it for me too, but we'll get to that in a second. So they've moved away from Hawkins,
right?
And then Mike at 11, and maybe even Will too. I don't know, but they were talking about seeing each other again, maybe at Christmas break or at Thanksgiving or something like that, or it's like, no, we should get together again at Christmas because it'll be cool for us to see what all we got as presents and stuff like that. I immediately thought, I'm like, the next season could be a Christmas, like a Christmas vacation season and stuff, which could make sense for them to come back to Hawkins to visit, which I think would be a really smart, no, that's still probably going to happen. I was say a really smart way of bringing, say, like Will and 11 back, where you don't have to bring Jonathan back if you don't want to, or Joyce for that matter. Although I wasn't really annoyed by Joyce's presence. I mean, but you could bring the kids back together for a short period of time. But I just don't get how the story goes to Russia or how Russia comes back to Hawkins in that way. I don't understand that at all. So a couple of things about Russia again. The subtitles and stuff, when they're going to get a prisoner and feed it to the Demogorgon, one of the people working says, "What about the American?"
Right.
So there's an American, obviously an American prisoner we're presumed to have, which surely I'm thinking has got to be Hopper.
Right.
And Hopper's not really dead. Rule number 1, boys and girls, if you don't watch a lot of TV, a main character, especially nowadays, almost never dies off screen.
Right.
And if they get shot, make sure they get shot in the heart.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we learned that from Lost.
Right.
So many survived gunshots in that series.
Yeah. Really. And then, although ironically, like, Locke survived all these things, and then initially he did die off screen.
That's true.
Yeah.
So what theories?
But like generally that's the theory. Like good shows don't kill characters off screen, with the exception of now that we have these like time hopping shows, they can kind of skirt around that. But generally, generally good shows don't kill characters off screen, and especially when you're seeing like how it happens, with scientists getting fried and melted or whatever, and then Hopper just disappears, and especially when there's a gateway to another dimension that he can get to. Like he can't get back into the little control room because of the machine throwing out all that electricity, but he could go into, the Upside Down. And so, yeah, I mean, regardless of whether or not he's the American in there, because some people have said, well, maybe it's that they've got Matthew Modine's character from season 1.
That was the other theory I heard too, because someone said he was still alive.
Someone on Elle's trip to Chicago in season 2, one of those characters mentioned that, and that would explain how the Russians knew about the Upside Down and why they knew to go to Hawkins and things like that. So it could have been, it could have been known. They could have known, like, okay, this is a scientist that was working for the Americans, or is an American, that was trying to open a portal. But it wouldn't really make much sense if they had him for that. Why would they even consider feeding him to the Demogorgon? So so if you've got him for the purpose of somehow like trying to open the Upside Down or something, that wouldn't really make that much sense. Whereas with Hopper, he's just an American who has no real value apart from maybe coming out of that dimension. So it wouldn't really make much sense. We don't know for sure, but it, we'll see.
I don't know how those two pieces tie together. I could see, you bringing up Chernobyl though, I could see that being a 3 or 4 month story arc in a season and leading to that. Although it's a big stretch.
It's
not a big stretch, but it's pretty far reaching to try to tie things to the 80s,
It is. And like, I would just worry about that getting too big. I mean, part of the appeal of Stranger Things has been small town group of kids. And so you're already kind of pushing the envelope with secret Russian base beneath the mall. And them somehow foiling it. Man, if you take them to Chernobyl, you're really pushing the envelope there. So I hope they don't go that route.
Yeah, and that's the charm. You're absolutely right. That's the charm of like your Goonies and your E.T. and shows like that, and movies like that from the 80s. And even, Back to the Future, which was a big focal point of this season, which I will give them credit, actually did release in theaters during that time period of season 3. It was 4th of July weekend in 84 or 85, whatever year it was. I heard one of the Screen Junkies guys say that. And I was like, hey, cool. That works for me. But like in the Goonies, you have just some kids trying to save their neighborhood from going into foreclosure or, being developed into a golf course. And, E.T. is, even though the government is involved, it's just like a small town neighborhood, it's just a very small world story. And so that's one of the reasons I love season 1 so much. It was just like a town, and it's not just because it's a town where I lived for such a long time, but it's so, we talk about, you talk about characters and storytelling being the everyman. I guess you could say it's like the every town, like the location is like so relatable in so many places, for anyone who grew up in a semi-suburban or rural area, and you still get that in season 2, and even a little bit some in season 3 until, you get to the Russian base.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, like, I'm sure there would still be things to enjoy, but like plucking these small town characters and throwing them into a global catastrophe, like an actual global catastrophe that has national and international implications, is, a little out of sorts.
Right. Plus, I'm not sure what they're going to get. They shoot in Georgia. What are you going to go to shoot at a nuclear power plant in Georgia, or what are you going to
They're
get
going to
to?
go to they're going to go to the Savannah River site, I guess, in Augusta or something. Go to the power plant there.
Yeah. One thing I hope from season 3 is just, I feel like, I think one thing that I didn't really like, and I kind of touched on some of this before, in terms of the character development, but our lack of character development for some of them, but it just feels like they've kind of settled these characters into certain roles of like, this is what this character does, this is what this character's role is, and maybe not for all 3 seasons, but at least for like 2 out of 3. And so, Lucas, like his role was kind of like the kid with the slingshot, in some ways. I mean, that was like one of the few like defining things about him. And then in season 3, he's the one that gets the I think he's the one that has the idea to do the fireworks. Yes. So he's like the kid that's got some projectile weapon option up his sleeve.
He's the arms dealer or whatever, the munitions expert or something.
Munitions expert, yeah. Dustin in season 2 was the one who found the D'Artagnan. Dustin in season 3 comes across the Russian code. Right. Yeah. Joyce in all 3 seasons has been the one who's kind of put this sort of weird puzzle type thing together, where season 1 she figures out the Christmas lights, season 2 it's the drawings, season 3 to a lesser extent, but she is still the one that realizes the thing with the magnets. And and kind of the same thing with Jonathan. Like we said, Jonathan and Nancy for the past 2 seasons, it's just kind of been their sleuthing and this, that, and the other. And so I hope for season 4, I would like to kind of see some different pairings, some different roles for some of these kids or characters in general. Because even though they tried to change some things up this season, I just didn't feel like it was enough. One thing that I really loved from a Joss Whedon series was actually the Buffy spinoff, Angel, which for most of its run, it was just okay. It was just solid. And then its final season 5, Joss Whedon, like Buffy had just ended the year before, Firefly got canceled. And so Joss Whedon had nothing else to do but to go put all his creative energy into Angel season 5. And it's honestly, I mean, for the most part, it's just kind of a cult hit show, but Angel season 5 is one of my favorite seasons of television of any show ever. It was just really, really good. And, it is high praise. Yeah. But, and one of the things they did, and this might have actually been in the season 4 finale, or I can't remember if it was in the season 5 premiere, but they really kind of shook up a lot of these kind of character roles. And there was a character, Charles Gunn, who was initially, when you meet him, he's kind of like this kind of like street savvy, sort of guy. And he's always kind of the muscle in the show. And in season 5, they, again, this is one of those things where when you start saying it out loud, it starts sounding kind of silly. But so Angel and his team, Angel, the centuries old vampire, and his like gang of his own little Scooby gang, they take over this this law firm that's like this evil law firm that is kind of like responsible for a lot of the evil in the world. And so they're trying to change it from the inside. So anyway, it looks like Charles Gunn is initially just like, you're going to be the muscle again. But they give him this completely different story arc in season 5, where he gets all of this knowledge like injected to him. And so he becomes this like, brilliant lawyer. And so just if you kind of go through the list of characters, they kind of put each one of them in like a situation that they really hadn't been in before. And it just worked out really great. So, we've just kind of seen some of the same things with some of these characters for at least 2 seasons for a lot of them, if not all 3 seasons. So, I hope they can come up with some ideas, like as these kids, continue to age a little bit, to put them in some different scenarios that kind of force them to grow, or give you an opportunity to see different aspects of their abilities or personalities or whatever.
Yeah, I'm going to half agree and half disagree with you on that. I definitely would want to see more mixed on the pairings. But one of the things, I'm glad you mentioned that though, because one of the things I really like about the show is the defined roles that each character brings to the table. Because this show, and I didn't even really get it until, I feel stupid for not catching on to this until like the end of season 2. But the show is like this manifestation of a Dungeons and Dragons game.
Yeah.
Where each character is a character in this like manifestation of Dungeons and Dragons. Cause like the very first episode, the Demogorgon is a Dungeons and Dragons monster. The Mind Flayer is a Dungeons and Dragons monster. And like they play on it a little bit when in season 2, when Max is trying to like ingratiate herself to the group, and most of the boys don't want her in it.
Right.
And she's like, well, I'm a Zoomer because she rides her skateboard and everything. And she ends up, stealing Billy's car at the end. And she's like, the driver, she's like, I told you I was a Zoomer or whatever. And I was like, huh. And then it didn't really click with me until you talked about Winona Ryder's character always being able to put together the pieces of the puzzle, and that Sean Astin was able to interpret the map that Will was drawing in season 2. And I was like, I love about this show how everybody has some sort of specific positive attribute that fits in the puzzle of figuring out what's going on, Now that does limit their usefulness in some areas. So I can see why that's a little boring, but there's something kind of charming about that to me, in that it's like a real life thing, and how they refer to their group of friends as their party,
Yeah. Right.
Like they still keep that language. And I didn't do any of the D&D stuff as a kid. So I mean, this is all kind of, I'm not super familiar with that element of it, but the fact that they, at the end of the season, like the montage that's going on, how they welcome Erica into the party, and everything. And she's kind of, she's got things that she's particularly good at. Like, I don't know if they'll keep Robin around for the next season or not, but how she was like the language person and stuff. Mm-hmm. So anyway, it's cool how they all have this one little facet that's necessary. So they're all like a puzzle piece that requires them to work together. And I don't think that can sustain in the long term. And again, who knows how that's going to work with Russia again, but, I would be really interested to see, I would at least like them to be faithful to their primary role, even if they do flesh it out a little bit. Cause I think that's one of the kind of the neat things is how it relates to the game as I understand it.
Yeah.
And for that being one of the biggest illustrations that's going on in the show long term, that's one thing I feel like they've had so much overwhelming opportunity to hit us in the face with, and they haven't really done that.
Yeah.
Like I'm just waiting for Mike to make one huge monologue about how we're really this one big D&D party, and the fact that they haven't done that, I really appreciate.
Well, I'm curious to see what, like, as the kids are getting older and kind of moving away from it, apart from, they kind of pass it along to Erica, and to a certain extent, it sounds like, well, Will said that he wouldn't find a new party for it. So I am curious to see, like, are they going to keep that thread? Because because even like the villain names have come from the game, from the Demogorgon and the Mind Flayer. So what happens if we get a new villain? What are they going to name him if they don't name him something from D&D? I don't know. So, but it does make me wonder, like, since part of the story was about the kids kind of feeling like they were outgrowing the game, will that little theme shift to something else?
Yeah, maybe it'll be like Nintendo now, and they'll call it the Mother Brain from like Metroid or something like that. They start to get into video games or something like that.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, if it switched to something else, what would it be? Maybe it would be like Metroid, or I don't know if they could do like Legend
Final Fantasy or something like that.
Yeah, Legend of Zelda or something. Yeah. So
Ganondorf.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So I don't know. We'll see. Just trying to think if there's anything else I really kind of wanted to touch on from season 3.
I've got one more thing while you're thinking about it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is we reverse redacted with our friend Judah, Guardians of the Galaxy,
right,
last week. And one thing we actually were amiss that we didn't talk about was the presence of the soundtrack in that film and how much that was like a character of the movie almost.
That's true.
That made that individual film so successul. And something I really liked about season 3 in particular was the sort of Awesome Mix-esque soundtrack of the film. And in that, the choices were decidedly 80s, of course, they would be. But it would be so easy to pick top cuts, and for your song choices, and being, in my early, 8 or at best, I was probably like 5, 6, 7, something like during this time. I think Material Girl by Madonna was probably the only song I recognized like right away. I was watching it with subtitles on, so they gave me the artist and song every time it came up. So that's how I learned them. But I was like, kudos to them for picking some like deep cut tracks. So some of the artists were still very obvious, but like, I mean, because I think even from season 2, Billy was a great reason to have him on the show as well. Because every time, especially in season 2, you saw him, you were going to get like Motley Crue or Ozzy Osbourne or, Skid Row or something like that. Some kind of trashy metal, some white trash metal or something like that. And to get going with it. No offense to anybody who likes this band. I'm not inferring that anyone who likes those are white trash or anyway, but Billy was, let's face it, before he had a redemptive moment. He had a hard life as a kid. Anyways, so I appreciated their ability, while I criticized them a little bit for being a little on the nose with some of their 80s references. That would have been a really easy trap to fall into, to try to find, and maybe it was a budget issue, who knows? And that forced them to do it. But that way they were able to maintain the feel of the time period without it being so blindingly obvious that they were trying to do that. It makes me think of a Guardians of the Galaxy versus a Suicide Squad, kind of thing. Like, we're going to pick popular songs, and like one feels like the time period, and one's like, okay, you're trying like really too hard.
Yeah. I did, I did kind of laugh at, it seems like the whole Steve Harrington getting beaten up thing is kind of like Stranger Things version of John Wick getting hit by a car. Like, it's just got to happen in every single season. But I did like the fact, and I like the fact that, I think Dustin, kind of called him out on, like, have you ever won a fight? And so he does get to win a fight, against one of the Russian guards down there. And then he gets to also make the save as possessed Billy is going to drive his Camaro.
That was a great hero moment.
That was a great hero moment for Steve. Steve is just the best. And I liked the fact that they did kind of subvert expectations with him and Robin, because the whole season they're setting it up like, oh, this is the girl that you should be with the whole time, and so it made it seem like it was going to be this arc of like Steve understanding, growing up and understanding the important attributes to look for. And he does, that is kind of what happens, but the payoff is completely different than
he's barking up the wrong tree.
Barking up the tree. Yeah. So, and I thought it was kind of funny, because nowadays, I mean, we're it's such a different time here now, going on 35, I guess, years later from where the show is set. But I did kind of chuckle at his initial confusion with that, because he's like, as she's telling him that she was, wasn't interested. She wasn't paying attention to him because she was interested in him. She was paying attention because the girl she was interested in was interested in him. And he's like, but you're a girl. I think he says, he says, but you're a girl. And it takes him a second. He's like, oh, and, so I thought I liked that. I liked that little moment. I also liked their little interaction at the end when they're going to get the job in the movie store. Bringing that character back from, I think he was working the arcade in season 2. So
yes.
So that was a good little thing. So I enjoyed that. I guess, my worry with it, I do have a couple of worries with it going forward, is just kind of what we talked about, well, I guess both of these go back to the same theme of the show getting too big. So I worry about it getting too big in the scale of the story that they're telling. And I also worry a little bit about it getting too big in terms of the cast size, just because, like, if we've got Robin on board now, if we've got Erica on board, I guess we did lose Billy. So we did lose one there, and we don't know, Hopper's going to come back, I'm pretty sure, but we don't know like how soon that'll be or what that role is going to be. But just adding more to the group, you kind of start to, there's only so much time, in an episode to focus on the characters. So I do worry about, like, if we'll be able to, like, drill down and really explore the characters enough to satisfy me. So I guess those are my concerns for it. I just, to wrap up with that, I did enjoy season 3. I enjoyed it more than season 2, and just kind of fingers crossed for season 4, and also hope that it doesn't take 2 years to deliver season 4, because we did nearly go 2 years between 2 and 3, but I'm hoping that a lot of that was related to just having to remodel Gwinnett Place Mall for that. Since most of the season was going to be taking place in Starcourt Mall. So hopefully they can use a location that doesn't take as long.
I thought I'd read that they were already beginning to prep production, or that it was going to start in January, or I don't know, either late 2019 or early 2020, like already. So which serves to me the idea that they could have it ready to drop November or December of 2020. Especially if I'm going to stick to my theory of it being a Christmas holiday themed season.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think they'll want to wait that long either, because they're just driving that much harder into adolescence, and you don't want to, and I don't know how much time they will have want to elapsed from the end of season 3 to the beginning of season 4, especially if you have Hopper if Hopper is alive and is that prisoner. Like, is he just going to have been in a Russian? Is he Jack Bauer? Is he just going to be a Russian prisoner for like 2 or 3 years, right, before he comes out? Or are they going to have the Lost problem where Walt is now 6'4", and
I wonder, like, how much. I wondered if that went into the decision to split the kids up more, or not really split the kids up, but split the kids up from, like, Jonathan, Nancy, Steve, and the adults, because I was watching an interview where I think it's Joe Keery, who plays Steve, was talking about, like, Finn Wolfhard is now taller than him.
Oh wow!
And so I wondered, just like, did they just, how much of this was like just to still hide, because you can tell just like looking at them, like they did their best to still kind of make them look like big kids, but right, with kind of like the childish looking haircuts and the outfits. and things like that. But like, if you really look at them, like, man, they're really big now. So, so I wondered how much of it was kind of related to that, to just not have to go through the logistics of making them seem smaller in a bunch of scenes, you know?
Yeah.
So but to your point, yeah, I would think that they would want to try to minimize, you know, the time, because
yeah,
God, you're gonna have to be sticking a lot more makeup on the kids to like hide the 5 o'clock shadows and stuff, you know?
yeah, right. Yeah, the clock's definitely ticking on preserving that youthful appearance on them. So, yeah, I mean, I would be optimistic to think sooner rather than later, and also it doesn't surprise me either. Um, you know, out of all the cast, David Hopper is the only one I'm aware of, and I know it's just because I'm a Marvel nerd, but from what I know, like, he is attached to the Black Widow movie, which is currently filming. So I could see him being off screen for a lot of this next season,
Well,
portions of it.
that's what they did with Mike in season 2. You don't notice it quite as much, I think, but I think if you go back and look at the time that Mike was actually on screen, it was more limited because he wanted to be able to shoot it, and so they you know, I think the Duffers were just, you know, pretty nice about it, and kind of worked it out to where he could go do that, because, you know, a lot of times actors just miss out on gigs because they're the projects that they're committed to, especially if it's a show where you've got like a 7-year contract or something like that, you know, they own you. And so if they say, no, you know, you can't, it conflicts with our shooting schedule, then you're just kind of out of luck. But I think they were really kind of nice to him about that and made sure that he would be able to do that. So, yeah, it could be something with David Harbour. Although, you know, he shot Hellboy, you know, I guess kind of in between seasons or whatever, but it could have been something with the Black Widow movie where the schedule was going to conflict, and this is their way of like kind of getting him off screen a little bit more till, you know, so he can go do that and come back or something.
Yeah. Perhaps that's what I'm going to choose to believe for now, which is funny considering it's the Black Widow movie and he's probably in Russia anyways. So
and who knows, it can't be set in the 80s because she's not that old, but but it's maybe, you know, probably going to be a prequel. So maybe it's going to be set in the, I don't know, early 2000s or something.
Yeah. I did hear, I mean, just real quick, I hear there's going to be part of it, I think, that is going to look into, or am I making this up? I'll just go ahead and say it. I thought I heard somewhere there was going to be an element of that that's like post Winter Soldier, you know, when she releases all of the intel information to the world.
Interesting.
To bring down Hydra, but pre Civil War.
Okay.
But now that I say that out loud, I don't really know how that would work logistically. But I think a lot of it is going to be pretty prequel, like pre-Avengers type stuff. So
yeah.
I don't know. But
yeah. Well, yeah, maybe we can talk actually, you know, some about some of that next time if we do a Marvel / Comic Con
Phase 4 discussion.
Yeah, Phase 4 discussion. So yeah, I'll be down for that in a week or so if you want to do that.
Yeah, sure, man. Plenty to discuss for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, because you know what the left does, Jared. It's their agenda.
It is. They're coming. They're coming for your movies, coming for your Marvel movies.
They're coming for all your Asgardian heterosexual romances.
And just for anyone who happens to have stumbled across this and has made their way to the end of it, if you don't already know us, which is, I don't know if there are going to be any of those people, but anyway, it's just a running joke of well, more so my dislike for Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire, but Stephen, regardless of where his feelings fall on all of that, is willing to indulge me in and poking fun at it. So,
well, that's what friends are for, Jared.
Yeah.
And I'll say this as my piece on that, and try to let it lay where it lies. I've always, or at least in the past 2 to 3 years, have been a proponent of the truth that there's enough real injustice in the world that we don't have to manufacture or exaggerate false ones or little ones to keep ourselves angry about things.
Right.
Just, if you want to be angry, just find a real thing.
Yeah.
There's plenty to choose from.
That's the interesting part, and that's an entirely different podcast. But the interesting part is normally it's the stuff that doesn't matter that people get the angriest over.
Of course, because if it doesn't matter, Jared, deep down, there's really nothing you have to do about it.
It's true.
So you can feel the anger without having any accountability towards action.
That's true.
But anyway, before I'm tiptoeing into podcasting identities that I don't have any business being in. So
no, let's do it. Let's just break right into that business. Honestly, it's the way to go. It's the way to go.
Yeah. I don't have the branding power of our friends to be able to really engage into that kind of impassioned speech.
That's true. Yeah. I'm in the wrong. I always say, like, speaking of Stranger Things and the Upside Down and Marvel and multiverse theories and all that, like, I still swear that somehow, somewhere around 2016, I got thrown into an alternate reality, and I've spent the past 3 years trying to find my way back to my dimension that I came from.
You and me both, man. I feel like that one story arc of the X-Men cartoon where Bishop is just walking along that path and getting annoyed by that little fairy guy or whatever. Yeah, like that was a deep pull. I'm sorry, but it sounds like you know what I'm talking about.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't understand this world we're living in, man.
Yeah. It's definitely that's the perfect way to end, or the perfect tie. We're talking about Stranger Things, and things just keep getting stranger.
Yeah. So just hold on to the 80s. Hold on to your nostalgia when things were a little simpler,
right?
Or at least more entertaining.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. The 1980s, not the 1880s, which is where we're trying to go back to, it seems like. But okay, on that note,
yes,
we're gonna wrap up and close off, and come back and see us for our Marvel Phase 4 talk.
All right. Until next time.
Till next time.